Hey, welcome to another episode of Coffee HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. Today, I want to talk a bit about a concept that I like to call a tactics class. Tactics class is a specific style of class format that I think is really useful for helping students kind of really sort of build upon what they've already learned, embed what they've learned, and understand like really how to apply techniques that they know as tactics, as things to solve fencing problems, rather than just a set of actions that they can do whenever they feel like it. This was, I don't remember if it was completely ripped from or merely heavily inspired by Kajetan Sadowski's book Fear is the Mind Killer, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, I would suggest going to read it. But it really came from trying to think about how to give students the opportunity to have a sort of more collaborative learning and a more exploratory learning within a fencing context, rather than just the kind of traditional teaching structure of giving them the answer. And if we think about that traditional structure that I'm kind of trying to get away from, uh, in most classes, what happens is you give your students a fencing problem, you give them a situation, or you should at least be doing that. Sometimes you don't, which is bad. And then you also give them a solution to the problem you've given them. And the tactics class flips that, right? In that you give them a fencing situation, but you don't give them the solution. And the student's job in the lesson is to work out how to solve the problem that you've given them. For those of you who are classroom teachers, this is similar an idea to the flipped classroom approach. For those of you who aren't, that made no sense and ignore it. And the kind of fencing problem you give is, for instance, you tell you something like this, right? You have an opponent who really wants to engage with you at the edge of their measure, so they're engaging at the longest possible distance that they can, and you don't want to let them do that. They're better than that, you. So how do you solve this? This is the one I just did last week, right? Or it could be, you have a fencer who fences using repeated zone house, and you need to deal with that. So the way I structure a tactics class, I give them the problem right up front. The first exercise they're given is to try and pretend to be the person that they're trying to beat later on. So they go away with their partner, they theorize about sort of what they think is good for that person to do, and they have a play with that with their swords, right? How they have a play is kind of up to them. It's normally not sort of full sparring. They'll sort of say, okay, I think this works. They try that and they say, no, well, it didn't work so well as we thought because of X. Maybe try it this way. So they're kind of exploring it as they go. The class then comes together. If you've got a really big class and small groups, if it's a smallish class, you can do the whole class. Each group shares their ideas about what worked well. So they've all got this kind of conception in mind about what good looks like for what they're trying to beat. And then after that, they go away and do the same thing again, but this time they keep in mind all those things that they're trying to beat as good practice. They keep that, but they're now looking at it from the perspective of the person trying to beat them. Once again, they come up with theories for things they think will work against this person, this hypothetical situation. They test them out with their swords, however they feel like, and then they come back and they share those results again to the group. I ask each group to give at least one, maybe more, thoughts about a thing that will work against this. And then for the last bit of the exit of the class, they go away and they take the ideas that the other students came up with and they test those and they see how they like them. You normally get quite a range. It's actually quite interesting, like how wide a range of techniques people recommend. Very rarely do you have every group converging on the same idea. Most of the time, each group comes up with, there are some overlaps, and then normally they'll also have something else that they'll come up with. So, if there's 5 groups, probably you're getting 4 solutions. There will be some overlap, especially if you've got newer people. But it is wonderful to see, and very often I've had situations where the responses they give are taken straight from the book. Not necessarily consciously, but they think, oh, this technique works for this situation. It's like, yep, that's exactly what the book says you should do. So it's really nice when you kind of spontaneously invent the book again. But in general, as I said, I did this earlier. Well, I did this Monday this week, and I had one student say, I've never used my brain this way before, and it is exactly for reasons like that this is a great thing to do, because it really forces students to think about how do they apply things in novel situations that they hadn't necessarily considered, which of course is incredibly useful when you're fencing a brand new opponent in a tournament context or a sparring context and you're trying to work out what they're doing. One final thing, if you do borrow the style, I would say if you have a mixed ability class, it is better to pair people with similar skill sets, similar levels of ability, rather than have a massive mismatch. What tends to happen is you've got one experienced person, one relatively beginner. The beginner will just go along with whatever the experienced person says. If you have two people who are kind of similar-ish abilities, they will collaborate on it. They will come up. They will bounce ideas off each other. They'll be kind of in a similar space, and they won't feel self-conscious about saying something because they're not sort of comparing themselves to somebody who is a massive level above them. And that kind of collaborative aspects to it is one of the major benefits of it. So both students will suffer from having a mismatch, both the more experienced and the less experienced person. But in general, these are excellent classes for, again, teaching tactical thinking, teaching problem solving and fencing, and understanding how to apply what you've learned in a free form context. Thanks for watching.